Ever tried growing an avocado from a pit, only to end up with a tall, spindly stem that never produces a single fruit? You're definitely not alone. That's one of the most common mistakes people make, and it's why so many folks think avocados are impossible to grow at home. But here's the truth. When you start with the right tree and follow a few key steps, growing avocados in your backyard is absolutely doable. In this video, I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know, from picking the right variety for your climate all the way through harvesting your very first avocados. And stick around to the end, because I've got a tip for ripening your avocados perfectly every single time. Let's get into it. Avocados are one of the most rewarding fruit trees you can grow in your home garden. There's really nothing quite like walking out to your backyard and picking a fresh, creamy avocado right off your own tree. And the good news is that once you understand what these trees need and how to care for them properly, they're actually much easier to grow than most people think. So let's start by understanding the basics. Now, before you even think about buying an avocado tree, you need to understand something really important, and that's climate. Avocados are subtropical trees, which means they love warmth and they absolutely hate frost. If you live in USDA zones 9 through 11, you're in prime avocado territory. That includes most of California, Florida, southern Texas, and parts of Arizona. If you're in Zone 8 or colder, you can still grow avocados, but you'll need to do it in a large container so you can move the tree indoors when temperatures drop below freezing. Here's the thing about avocados and cold. Even a light frost can damage the leaves and young branches, and a hard freeze below 28 degrees Fahrenheit can kill a mature tree. I've seen it happen. A neighbor of mine lost a beautiful 15-year-old Hass avocado during an unexpected cold snap because they didn't protect it in time. So if you're in a borderline zone, just be prepared to cover your tree or bring it inside when frost threatens. Now let's talk about varieties, because this is where a lot of people get confused. There are actually 3 main types of avocados. You've got your Mexican types, your Guatemalan types, and your West Indian types. Each one has different characteristics and different cold tolerances. Mexican varieties are the most cold-hardy and can handle temperatures down to about 22 degrees Fahrenheit. Guatemalan types are somewhere in the middle, tolerating temperatures down to about 26 degrees. And West Indian varieties are the most cold-sensitive, needing temperatures to stay above 28 degrees at all times. The most popular variety for home gardens is the Hass avocado, which is actually a hybrid between Mexican and Guatemalan types. Hass produces those dark, pebbly-skinned avocados you see in every grocery store, and, for good reason. They're creamy, delicious, and the trees are reliable producers. Another great choice is the Forte, which has smooth green skin and a milder, buttery flavor. If you're in a warmer climate like Florida, you might consider the Bacon or the Zutano, both of which do well in humid conditions. One more thing about varieties. Avocados have what's called Type A and Type B flowering patterns. Without getting too technical, having both a Type A and a Type B tree nearby can improve your fruit set because they cross-pollinate each other. Hass is a Type A and Fuerte is a Type B. Now, a single tree can produce fruit on its own through self-pollination, but if you have the space for 2 trees, you'll often get a better harvest. Now that you understand the basics, let's talk about selecting your avocado tree. And this is really important, so pay attention. Whatever you do, don't try to grow an avocado tree from a pit if you want fruit anytime soon. I know it's tempting. We've all seen those pictures of avocado pits suspended over a glass of water with toothpicks, roots dangling down into the water. It's a fun project, and yes, you can grow a tree that way. But here's the problem. A tree grown from a pit can take anywhere from 7 to 15 years to produce fruit, And even then, there's no guarantee the fruit will taste anything like the avocado you got the pit from. Instead, what you want is a grafted tree from a reputable nursery. Grafted trees are created by taking a cutting from a proven fruit-producing variety and attaching it to hardy rootstock. This gives you the best of both worlds. You get a tree that will produce fruit in 3 to 4 years, sometimes even sooner, and you know exactly what kind of avocados you're going to get. When you're shopping for your tree, look for one that's at least 2 to 3 feet tall, with a healthy green canopy and no signs of disease or pest damage. Check the graft union, which is that knobby area near the base of the trunk where the fruiting variety was attached to the rootstock. It should be fully healed over with no cracks or oozing sap. You can find grafted avocado trees in most garden centers in warmer climates, and there are also several online nurseries that will ship them directly to your door. I've had good luck ordering trees online, but just make sure you're buying from a reputable source and that they guarantee live delivery. All right, you've got your tree. Now it's time to get it in the ground, or in a container if that's the route you're going. Let me walk you through exactly how to do this. If you're planting in the ground, location is everything. Avocados need full sun, which means at least 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight every day. They also need excellent drainage. And I cannot stress this enough. Avocados hate wet feet. If your soil holds water and stays soggy after rain, your tree's roots will rot and the tree will die. It's that simple. So choose a spot on a slight slope, if possible, or an area where water drains away quickly. Before you dig your hole, do a simple drainage test. Dig a hole about 1 foot deep and 1 foot wide, fill it with water, and let it drain completely. Then fill it again and time how long it takes to drain. If the water drains within an hour or 2, you've got good drainage. If it's still sitting there after 4 or 5 hours, you need to find a different spot, or consider building a raised mound to plant in. Now here's how to plant your tree. Dig a hole that's about twice as wide as the root ball, but only as deep as the root ball itself. You don't want to plant your avocado too deep. In fact, the top of the root ball should sit slightly above the surrounding soil level, maybe an inch or so higher. This helps prevent water from pooling around the trunk, which can cause root rot. Gently remove the tree from its container and loosen any circling roots with your fingers. Place the tree in the hole and backfill with the native soil you dug out. Don't add compost or amendments to the planting hole. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but research has shown that backfilling with native soil encourages the roots to grow outward into the surrounding ground rather than staying confined to a pocket of rich soil. Once you've backfilled, create a small basin around the tree to help direct water toward the roots and give it a deep, thorough watering. If you're planting in a container, choose a pot that's at least 24 inches in diameter and 20 inches deep. Make sure it has plenty of drainage holes in the bottom. For your potting mix, use a well-draining blend. I like to mix equal parts potting soil, perlite, and coarse sand. This gives you good moisture retention while still allowing excess water to drain away quickly. Plant your tree at the same depth it was growing in its nursery container, water it well, and place it in the sunniest spot you have. One thing I want to mention about container growing. Your tree will need to be repotted every 3 to 4 years as it grows, moving up to a larger container each time. And because container-grown trees have limited root space, they'll need more frequent watering and fertilizing than trees planted in the ground. But the trade-off is that you can move your tree indoors during cold weather, which makes container growing the only option for folks in colder climates. Now let's talk about watering, because this is where a lot of people run into trouble. Avocados are a bit finicky when it comes to water. They need consistent moisture, but they absolutely cannot tolerate soggy soil. It's a balancing act, and getting it right is one of the keys to a healthy, productive tree. For newly planted trees, water deeply 2 to 3 times per week for the first few months. You want to soak the entire root zone, then let the top few inches of soil dry out before watering again. Stick your finger into the soil about 2 inches deep. If it feels dry at that depth, it's time to water. If it still feels moist, wait another day or two. As your tree matures, you can back off on the frequency, but increase the depth. Established trees generally need a deep watering once or twice a week during the growing season, depending on your climate and soil type. In hot, dry weather, you may need to water more frequently. In cooler or humid conditions, less often. The key is to watch your tree and pay attention to what it's telling you. If the leaves start to look droopy or dull, the tree needs water. If the leaves are turning yellow and dropping, you may be overwatering. One of the best things you can do for your avocado tree is apply a thick layer of mulch around the base. I use about 4 to 6 inches of wood chips or shredded bark, spread in a circle about 3 to 4 feet out from the trunk. Keep the mulch a few inches away from the trunk itself to prevent moisture from sitting against the bark. Mulch does a few important things. It helps retain soil moisture so you don't have to water as often. It keeps the roots cool during hot weather, and as it breaks down over time, it adds organic matter to the soil. By the way, if you're finding this helpful, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future videos. All right, let's keep going. Now let's talk about fertilizing, because avocados are hungry trees and they need regular feeding to produce well. But here's the thing. You don't want to fertilize a newly planted tree right away. Wait at least 2 to 3 months after planting before you apply any fertilizer. The tree needs time to establish its roots first, and fertilizing too early can actually burn those tender new roots. Once your tree is established, you'll want to fertilize 3 to 4 times per year during the growing season. I start in early spring, usually around February or March, then again in late spring, midsummer, and early fall. The last application should be at least a month or two before your first expected frost, so the tree has time to harden off before winter. As for what to use, avocados do best with a balanced, slow-release fertilizer that's formulated for fruit trees or citrus. Look for something with an NPK ratio around 6:4:6 or 8:4:8. You can also use organic options like composted chicken manure, fish emulsion, or kelp meal. I like to alternate between a granular, slow-release fertilizer and liquid fish emulsion throughout the season. One thing to keep in mind is that avocados are sensitive to salt buildup in the soil, which can happen over time with regular fertilizing, especially if you're using synthetic fertilizers. You'll notice salt damage as brown, crispy leaf tips and edges. If you see this happening, give your tree a deep, slow watering to flush the salts down through the soil. Let the hose trickle at the base of the tree for 30 minutes to an hour. Do this a few times a year as a preventive measure, especially if you're in an area with hard water. Avocados also benefit from some specific micronutrients, particularly zinc and iron. In some soils, these nutrients are present but not available to the tree because of the soil pH. If you notice yellowing leaves with green veins, that's often a sign of iron deficiency. A foliar spray of chelated iron or zinc can help correct this quickly. You can find these at most garden centers, and they're easy to apply with a simple pump sprayer. Now let's move on to pruning and shaping your avocado tree, which is something a lot of home growers overlook. Avocados don't require heavy pruning like some fruit trees, but a little selective trimming goes a long way toward keeping your tree healthy, manageable, and productive. The best time to prune is in late winter or early spring, just before the new growth starts. Avoid pruning in the fall, because any new growth that results won't have time to harden off before winter, and it could be damaged by cold. For young trees, your main goal is to shape the tree and encourage a strong branching structure. If your tree is growing straight up like a single pole, you can pinch or cut the top to encourage it to branch out. I like to do this when the tree reaches about 3 to 4 feet tall. Just snip off the top few inches, and the tree will respond by sending out side branches below the cut. This gives you a fuller, bushier tree that's easier to manage and harvest from. For mature trees, focus on removing any dead, damaged, or diseased wood. Also look for branches that are crossing over each other or growing toward the center of the tree. You want good air circulation through the canopy, which helps prevent fungal diseases. If your tree is getting too tall to harvest from comfortably, you can trim back the top to keep it at a manageable height. Avocados are pretty forgiving and will bounce back from pruning without too much fuss. One important tip: when you make pruning cuts, don't cut flush against the trunk or main branch. Leave a small collar about 1/4 inch where the branch meets the larger wood. This helps the tree heal over the wound more quickly. And always use clean, sharp pruning tools to make clean cuts and avoid spreading disease. Now let's talk about some common problems you might run into and how to solve them. The good news is that avocados are generally pretty hardy once they're established, but there are a few issues to watch out for. First, let's talk about root rot. This is probably the #1 killer of avocado trees, and it's almost always caused by overwatering or poor drainage. The fungus that causes root rot, called Phytophthora, thrives in wet soil. You'll notice the leaves turning pale green or yellow, then brown, and they'll drop off. The tree will look wilted even though the soil is moist. If you dig down and look at the roots, they'll be dark and mushy instead of white and firm. Unfortunately, once root rot sets in, it's very difficult to save the tree. The best approach is prevention. Make sure your soil drains well, don't overwater, and avoid planting in low-lying areas where water collects. If you catch it early, you can try letting the soil dry out completely and applying a fungicide drench. But honestly, prevention is your best bet. Second, watch out for salt burn. I mentioned this earlier, but it's worth repeating because it's so common. Avocados are very sensitive to salt, and it builds up in the soil from fertilizers and irrigation water. The symptoms are brown, crispy leaf tips and margins. The solution is to flush the soil with deep, slow watering several times a year and consider switching to a low-salt fertilizer if the problem persists. Third, you might notice leaves turning yellow with green veins remaining. This is usually iron chlorosis, caused by the tree's inability to absorb iron from the soil. It's especially common in alkaline soils. Apply a chelated iron product either as a foliar spray or soil drench, and consider adding sulfur to lower your soil pH over time. Fourth, let's talk about pests. The most common ones are avocado thrips, mites, and the avocado lacebug. Thrips cause scarring on the fruit skin, which is mostly cosmetic, but can make the fruit look unappealing. Mites cause bronzing of the leaves. Lacebugs cause yellow stippling on the upper leaf surface. For all of these, a good blast of water from the hose can knock down populations. For heavier infestations, horticultural oil or insecticidal soap works well. Apply it early in the morning or late in the evening when temperatures are cooler to avoid burning the leaves. Fifth, if your tree is producing flowers but no fruit, you might have a pollination problem. While avocados can self-pollinate, having a second tree of a different type, one type A and one type B, significantly improves fruit set. If you only have room for one tree, try hand pollinating. Use a small paintbrush to transfer pollen from flower to flower in the morning when they're open. It's tedious, but it works. Sixth, sometimes fruit will drop off the tree when it's still small. A little fruit drop is normal. The tree naturally sheds some fruit it can't support. But if you're losing a lot of fruit, it's usually a sign of stress, either from inconsistent watering, temperature extremes, or nutrient deficiency. Make sure you're watering consistently and feeding your tree regularly throughout the growing season. The good news is, if you follow the steps we've covered, you should be able to avoid most of these issues and enjoy a healthy, productive tree for many years. All right, now for the really exciting part, harvesting your avocados. This is what we've been working toward, and let me tell you, there's nothing quite like picking your first homegrown avocado. It's incredibly satisfying. Here's something that surprises a lot of people. Avocados don't ripen on the tree. They mature on the tree, but they won't actually soften until after you pick them. This is actually great news for home growers because it means your tree is like a living storage unit. You can leave the fruit on the tree for months after it reaches maturity, picking them as you need them. So how do you know when an avocado is ready to pick? Well, the timing depends on your variety. Hass avocados are typically ready from late winter through summer, depending on your climate. Fuerte matures a bit earlier, usually fall through winter. The fruit should have reached full size for its variety, and the skin color may darken slightly. But the best way to test for maturity is to pick one and see if it ripens properly. Pick a fruit that looks full-sized, bring it inside, and set it on the counter at room temperature. If it softens within a week or two and tastes good, your crop is ready. If it shrivels up or turns rubbery, the fruit needs more time on the tree. When you're ready to harvest, use pruning shears or a sharp knife to cut the stem about an inch above the fruit. Don't pull or twist the fruit off, as this can damage the tree and leave the fruit with an open wound that invites decay. For fruit that's high up on the tree, you can use a long-handled fruit picker with a basket attachment. Once you've picked your avocados, they'll ripen at room temperature in about 4 to 7 days, depending on how mature they were. You'll know they're ripe when they yield slightly to gentle pressure, like pressing your thumb into a tennis ball. If you want to speed up the ripening, put the avocados in a paper bag with a banana or apple. The ethylene gas from the other fruit will accelerate the process. And if you want to slow down ripening, pop them in the refrigerator. A ripe avocado will keep in the fridge for another 3 to 5 days. Now for that bonus tip I promised you at the beginning. This is something I do every single time I harvest, and it's made a huge difference in how I enjoy my homegrown avocados. Here's the trick. When your avocados are ripe and ready to eat, slice them in half, remove the pit, and brush the flesh with a tiny bit of lime or lemon juice. Then sprinkle on some flaky sea salt and a pinch of red pepper flakes. That's it. Eat it straight out of the skin with a spoon. The acid from the citrus brightens up the rich, creamy flavor of the avocado. The salt enhances everything. And the pepper flakes add just a little kick. It sounds simple, but when you're eating a perfectly ripe avocado that you grew yourself, this simple preparation lets the flavor really shine. I eat them this way almost every day during harvest season, and it never gets old. You can also freeze your avocados if you end up with more than you can eat fresh. Just cut them in half, remove the pit and skin, and mash the flesh with a tablespoon of lemon juice per avocado. Pack it into freezer bags, squeeze out the air, and freeze. It'll keep for 4 to 6 months and works great in smoothies, guacamole, or spread on toast. So that's everything you need to know to grow delicious avocados right in your own backyard. If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. And if you've got any questions or tips of your own, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and happy gardening.